Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Back and ready to talk some more baseball with you. This is the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley, coming at you with a lot to talk about today on this, Sunday when you hear this, Saturday of recording. It's October 24th right now as I'm recording this. It's a little bit early afternoon, getting us ready for Game 4 of the World Series. Excited for that Game 4. But we have a lot of things that we need to talk about. So, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a World Series recap, what we've seen in Games 1, 2, and 3 so far. Game 4, a little bit of a preview. I want to take some time to talk about some odds in winning the series. And what I mean by that is kind of percentages. Percentages of a team winning based on what the series count is at. If it's 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, so on and so forth. I want to have that conversation a little bit. And I also want to talk about something that could potentially be changing in baseball. Hopefully it does not. It's a sore subject for me when it comes to baseball, and it has to do with today's game. So we will get to all of that. But if there is one thing I want to start off with, it's a little bit of some pen thoughts that I have for the MLB right now as I look forward to the 2021 season. And I even wrote this one down. It was I saw some news that was upsetting to me, and I really had to write down, Dear MLB, let's not mess up this 2021 season. And if you're wondering what's bothering me heading into next year, considering that this season hasn't necessarily ended yet, though it has to do with a rule change that happened in the 2020 season that looks like may not be in place for 2021. There currently is talk of no DH in the National League for the 2021 season. And I'm just confused. Confused would be the best way to put it, yeah. I have been watching so many games. I have been talking to so many people, staying up to date on a lot of websites, articles, so much that has been going on. And if there is one thing that I know I have not been seeing, it's people crying for more pitcher at-bats in the regular season, postseason, and so on. I really thought the push for the DH was something that was getting louder and louder as the seasons were happening. Just make it happen in the National League and American League. And then we finally get there in our shortened, weird season. And with all of that, it looks like we're still going to push back to the way things were before this year. And I'm just confused on it. Now, this is reports right now, and it's reported that it's going to be a short-lived thing. This came from Lavelle Neal, reporting out of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, saying, as of now, the DH will be AL only next season. I'm hearing the union and MLB would have to expand it to both leagues through bargaining. Now, that makes me truly wonder if it's something that owners want and players don't. If players want and owners, I don't know which way that's going, because with it being a bargaining thing, you need one side to give up for the other side to agree. So I don't know necessarily where the push is coming from for it not to be used. And the Players Union and MLB would have to agree upon changing this. And the current collective bargaining agreement that is in place expires after the 2021 season, so it could change after that. So maybe they're just going, okay, we're going to go back to the way that we're used to playing until the CBA expires, and then we'll revisit it. Maybe that's the plan here. But if they had the ability to make this change in this shortened season, I don't know why they can't do it for another year. And it bothers me in a lot of ways because it was allowing teams to be more creative, way more creative with the lineups they were putting out there. Guys that you necessarily maybe wouldn't be able to use because you're scared of a matchup or you're scared of them defensively hurting you on the field, doesn't matter now. We now have 15 more teams that don't have to worry about that. We got to play matchups a little bit better. Maybe you got to bring one more guy off your bench, a lefty bat, and throw that in your lineup because you have the advantage there against a righty starter. It also allowed for teams to get other players more consistent at bats. Okay, we know a lot of these lineups might have their 6 to 7 guys potentially that are consistently in the lineup. And so now we're just not going to give those guys another opportunity to get at bats. So more teams also now can't take advantage of having guys on their roster that are there just to hit. Okay, that's the way things have been in the American League for a long time. Now, there's obviously some teams that rotate in and out who is their DH. That happens, that's fine. But I look at a team like the Minnesota Twins. Nelson Cruz was a staple in their lineup at the DH. One of their best hitters. He was there just to play the DH. And now I don't like the idea of, okay, we're going to go play a National League team, and where are we going to fit him in the lineup? Maybe we're worried about his defense. These players are losing opportunities. I mean, I'm in the Wisconsin area. I saw what Daniel Vogelbach did this year for the Brewers. Yeah, you could play him at first base, but they'd rather not. Just DH him. Just put the bat in the lineup. You're taking something away from these teams that was helpful. It was creative lineups, playing matchups, consistent at bats for another player. And now, when this free agency is going to hit, you are taking half the teams, half the league, that potentially now can't take risks on people that can just hit anymore. I'll stay with the Brewers on this. Vogelbach was one of their best hitters this year. He was not good before Milwaukee this year. Let's be honest. Was not doing well. Came to Milwaukee. They put him in the DH spot. He was hitting well. It feels like then, hey, maybe Milwaukee's going to want a reunion with him next year. Sign him back to play. But now if there's no DH spot, that gets harder for them to do. That gets harder for a lot of teams in the National League to justify signing him sometimes. And now the American League, it gets easier for them to open up a bench spot or open up a spot for him because they know they have the DH opportunity. I don't understand why something that worked well, we have to take it away for 1 year. And this, again, I need to throw this out. It could be just for 1 year, and it could be done. It could come back in the 2022 season. But it just doesn't make any sense to me. MLB, do not mess up the 21 year. This was one thing that worked that looks like you're going to reverse next year. So let's make sure that we are looking closely at everything in the winter meetings. Everything that we changed in the winter meetings. Because I think there's a lot of positives that came out of this year that if you just ignore them, it's going to hurt you with viewership in the next year. The shortened season was one thing I think that helped. Now that is going to be another CBA thing. That'll be a discussion. But at the winter meetings, it should be talked about. Can we shorten this next season? Can we get the players to agree to that? Which I don't think will be hard as long as salary is guaranteed. Can we move 162 down to 120, 100? Again, if salary is going to stay the same, I think a lot of these teams, they will have no problem pushing that. That'll be the main discussion. Can we justify all the contracts that we had signed before? That's another discussion. Double headers, those 7-inning games, that was something that was definitely up in the air, was going to be difficult. But I think in the long run, we learned this wasn't that bad. This wasn't really that bad. And maybe having some doubleheaders planned isn't a bad thing for the next year. 7 innings means you're also giving some life, trying to preserve pitching and keep pitching fresh. And that's the same thing with the shortened season. We saw a lot of injuries with pitching this year, and that's because of the quick ramp up to get going. If we have some more doubleheaders and we have a shortened season to get some more rest days in there to help these pitchers, I think that's a smart move. Try to preserve arms. Do what you can to keep these pitchers on the field. Those are two things you're going to have to look at. Also, on top of that, let's stay with our pitchers. Revisit the reliever rule. I don't think I lean heavily one way or the other on this. The 3 batters or you must finish an inning. I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing because you're forcing these guys to be more strategic with the pitchers they want to use. But at the same time, I understand if a manager wants to go, hey, I want to go matchup late in the game. If I want to use 2 pitchers in 1 inning, I should be allowed to do that. So I wouldn't be upset if either way if this one comes or goes. But it's something they'll have to be revisited. And if there's one other thing that I honestly thought it was a win, and a lot of baseball purists might have hated it, I think the extras rule in the regular season was just fine. And this goes to saving arms again with pitchers, creating more action earlier. You bring in bunting. Hey, baseball purists, that's part of the game that's coming back a little bit there. There's some strategy that goes into it. And you're cutting down this game time. I know that it's not likely that these games are always going to go 16, 17, very long. But I think in the regular season, the extras was fine. It was just fine. It ultimately didn't end up ruining any seasons. So that's something else they're going to have to look at and say, could we keep this or not? And then the playoff format. The best of 3 wild card round was great. 16 teams was just too much. Go ahead, revisit that, maybe cut down a few teams, but still have that best of 3. It isn't until you play it that you truly notice. I think now the play-in game, the one play-in game for the wild card, I think it's a bad idea now because the best of 3 is just better. 2 wins is more convincing than 3. 2 wins is more convincing than 1. So go in that best of 3 series. You're going to get the better team instead of the team that might just have the one better pitcher or the one hot game. There's just so many great things that happen. So many great things that happened in this season. MLB, your first decision to get rid of the DH, a thing that was a positive, is not a good move right away. And like I said, I've been watching a lot of games. I've been talking to a lot of people. The people that I've been communicating with are shocked that the DH is disappearing in the National League next year. You have more people that are going, why would you do this? Than, yeah, good move. Good move, we agree. I'm confused at it. And we'll see what happens. Don't get stuck in being the league that considers yourself tradition. Evolve. We do this in the game. We evolve. We see what we need to do to win, what we need to do to change, what we need to do to be better. This is a mistake. And even if it's just for one season, it's a mistake. They need to fix this, and I hope when it comes to other things at the winter meetings, they fix it all. So, that's what I had to get off my chest. I had to talk about right away. MLB, it's up to you guys. I really hope these owners and everyone figures this one out. It doesn't make sense to me, but hopefully it changes. Hopefully it changes. So that's going to be it for this first segment. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back because we need to talk about the World Series, that baseball that is actually happening right now. Because it's been a fun series so far, and we need to get up to date on everything, but also preview the game to come tonight, or at least the game that happened when you're listening on Sunday here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Well, we got the tough discussion out of the way. That's the thing that feels good right away. The MLB, they have a lot of decisions that they're going to have to make, and a lot of tough decisions at that. But sometimes you just got to sit there and you got to think about it and be like, are we making the right decision? So I had to get that stuff off my chest. I had to talk about it. But we need to move on, and we need to actually start talking about the World Series games that are actually happening at this exact moment. So let's talk about it. So World Series recap, getting you up to speed on everything that's happened so far. So game 1 went to the Dodgers in an 8-3 victory. We saw a great performance from Clayton Kershaw. He went strong, 6 innings, 8 Ks, only gave up 1 earned run. We got to see Mookie Betts have himself a great game to start things off as he went, I believe it was 2 for 4. He had 2 for 4 right away to start out of the gate. Max Muncy had a good game as well, 2 for 4. And we also had Chris Taylor went 2 for 3 in that game. Was big for the Dodgers. They just seemed to control that game start to finish as they got out to a 2-0 lead in the 4th. They were up 6-1 at the end of the 5th, and it was just an easy win. Made things look like the Dodgers were going to roll with things. But then game 2 came out, and Tampa Bay struck back as they had a 6-4 victory, and they took the opportunity to jump out to a big lead. Big reason why Brandon Lau had himself a game with 2 home runs. A big reason why they were able to take down the Dodgers in that game. And then game 3 was kind of similar to game 1 in the sense that the Dodgers came out and they just looked strong right away. I mean, they were up 5-0 after 4 innings. They won the game 6-2. Walker Buehler showed how great of a pitcher he is. 6 innings, 10 strikeouts. Now, the thing is, we've talked about how good Tampa Bay's pitching is, their bullpen and their starters. But when everything is right, Walker Buehler might be the best pitcher in this series. And everything looked right in that game. It just really shows how tough that Dodgers team can be because they do have the offensive talent, the pitching talent. It's just when everything is rolling that they're unbeatable, it feels like. So we have to take the time to look into Game 7 and talk about the things that are going to be happening. And MLB.com did a great job kind of previewing this game and talking about 7 key things that are going to matter in Game 4. And the first thing that they bring up is talking about when they win and when they're at their best. Like we said, the Dodgers look unbeatable. When they're getting great pitching matched by their offensive talent and great play from Mookie Betts to start things off, they just seem to roll. And we had the feel early on in that game with how Walker Buehler was pitching that they weren't going to need much run support, but yet they're still able to get it. Rays are going to have to get after Dodger pitching early. The team that has been getting the lead right away has been winning the game so far. So that's going to be something that I look at right away. Which team can get on the scoreboard first? Another thing, should the Rays be potentially worried after seeing how things went with their pitchers? Glasnow, Snell, and Morton. Is their strength? The Dodgers come out of that gauntlet of 3 pitchers with a 2-1 lead. Now, the Rays have to go to their 4th guy, Ryan Yarbrough, who is a guy who is a steady pitcher. He's not the guy with the stuff like those other 3 is. He's going to eat innings and do what he can. But he just needs to be better than what those 3 starters were. They have put up an 8.78 ERA in the first 3 starts. Glasnow, Snell, and Morton. That's just not going to cut it. Okay? None of them made it past the 5th inning. Or out of the 5th inning, we should say. But the Rays have had to go to their bullpen 3 games already. So they need to get a game in which a starter can go a little bit further. And that's what is going to be big in this Saturday game. So the Rays also need to be looking at what has been probably their biggest strength all year. And that's their top end defense that just seems to take things away. And it feels like so far they haven't been getting that. Now, has their defense been atrocious, bad? No, not necessarily. I mean, they haven't committed any errors in these 3 games, so there's no problems there. But it was to a point this season where things were just so stingy, and you had to really work to get runs off of Tampa Bay. So is this going to be the game that maybe we see them take some things back? Going to be interesting to see. So it's going to be that pitching, and it's going to be that defense. Can you make things tougher on this Dodgers team? Because that offense for the Dodgers does not need any help. A guy also now that's going to be a big part in if the Rays are going to go on and maybe win Game 4 is if Randy Arozarena is back to hitting. So if you did not see going into the 9th inning, Game 3, it looked like maybe Arozarena's hot start had cooled off. In Game 2, he had got a hit that tied him with Derek Jeter for the most hits by a rookie in a single postseason. But he did not get another hit until the 9th inning when he got his 8th home run in the postseason, tying him with Barry Bonds, Nelson Cruz, and Carlos Beltran for the most home runs in a single postseason. That's not rookie record. That's player record, most home runs in a postseason. Arozarena at 8. If his bat is starting to get going again, that is big news for Tampa Bay. Now, I'm a little concerned because it came off of Kenley Jansen, who has been, a good closer in the past, but this postseason's been a little questionable. So we're going to have to see, is that truly him turning things around, or is it going to be just, getting a good matchup at the time? So we'll have to see with that. And then if it is the case, it's that offensive production that we need to see from Tampa Bay. We talked about it when we were looking at players that were going to matter in this series. If they were going to win. Why was Tampa Bay going to win? It was going to be Brandon Lowe, and it was going to be Arozarena. Lowe had his big game. He did it in Game 2. He is a reason why they have won a game in this World Series. Asking a 25-year-old rookie to carry things for your team is a big ask. But Arozarena is a big reason why they're here in the first place. So is he going to be giving that spark that he and the Rays needed to keep moving on? That'll be something to see. The interesting move that's going to be happening for the Dodgers, the Game 4 starter, Julio Urias. His last start came on October 14th. That was 9 days ago. And that was in a game where the Dodgers scored 11 runs in the first inning. And He went on to pitch 5 innings, 101 pitches in that game. He was then used to be ready for Game 7 4 days later. So, he's back to making starts. Just 24 years old. And you wonder if he is going to be ready for this one if he doesn't get the massive lead. Now, the thing that's been nice for him, Urias, is that he has been solid in the postseason. He has been shutting the door, giving a lot of great innings for the Dodgers. But that start in the last game against the Braves where he really shut them down, you got 11 runs of support in the first inning. 11 runs. There's not a lot of pressure to pitch when you have that big of a lead right away because there's a couple things on your mind. One, you got to really, really, really mess things up to blow an 11-run lead. And also, I'd be sitting there thinking, there's a good chance I'm going to get more run support as this game goes on. If we were able to get 11 in the first inning, there's going to be more runs coming. Is he going to be able to do that if the game is tighter and he is ready? This is a big, big turning game in the series. And we're going to talk more about the numbers of why this is such a big game. But you are asking one of your younger pitchers who has had an up and down career to step in and be ready for this. Will he be able to answer the call and be the guy? This is his first World Series start. He was there back in 2018. He did appear in 3 games. But with all of his postseason experience, all of this pitching he's done in such a young career, this is going to be the biggest game that he has. And as much as I want to believe that he is the guy with his experience in the postseason so far, it is on a whole nother level when you are starting a game in the World Series. So we'll see if he's the guy to step up and be big for the Dodgers. And it is such a big game for the Dodgers in the sense that they have been so close, reaching so many World Series. They are trying to win their first World Series since 1988. They have reached the World Series 3 of the last 4 years. But they have never gone up 2-1 in any of those World Series that they have. In 2018, they fell behind 2-0 to the Red Sox, and then they won a long extra innings game. They lost Game 3 in 2017 to fall behind to the Astros. They tied it up in Game 4, though. That was a big thing. That was a big game. So the thing is, you're looking at this team and you're wondering, can they finally get over that hump? This Dodgers team has been so good. They have been there so many times. This is their chance to finally get that advantage to look like things are going to work out. We're going to talk about it again, about some odds going forward. This is a make or break game, I feel, for the Dodgers. With momentum in this, if they lose this one, I get a little nervous. I think it's justified, but if I'm the Dodgers, I'm feeling confident. I mean, the batting that they are getting from their team in the World Series, Mookie Betts is batting .333, Seager's .333, Justin Turner's .308, Max Muncy .364. That's your top 4 guys. That's pretty great. Will Smith is cooled down a little bit, but he's a bat you trust. Bellinger's .182, Chris Taylor's .273. Kiki Hernandez, he's at .250. I mean, this offense is just clicking in these 3 games in the World Series, while the offense for the Rays is not as much there. We talked about how Brandon Lowe had his game in Game 2. He's still only batting .154 in the World Series. So it's hard to bet against this Dodgers team. It really is at this point. It looks like they are sitting in prime position to take this World Series, and it's all going to come down to this Game 4. And I want to talk about that. I want to dive into that a little bit deeper as to why Game 4 is going to matter so much. We're going to take a quick break, and I want to come back and look at some actual numbers as to why this could be a big-time swing game here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Always fun to talk about the World Series and get this stuff. You know, we have so much baseball talk to really had. We even had some announcements today that had to do with some awards, as we had some reliever awards. Liam Hendriks for the Oakland A's won the 2020 Mariano Rivera American League Reliever of the Year award. And then Brewers rookie Devin Williams won the Trevor Hoffman National League Reliever of the Year award. That was announced on Saturday. So today at this recording, Hendricks had a 1.78 ERA in 24 appearances, 25 and a third innings for Oakland. He had a great season. He's going into this offseason a free agent, and he's going to get paid just because when you are that great of a reliever in back-to-back seasons, you're going to get paid a little bit. Devin Williams, he was solid. He struck out 53 while walking only 9 batters. In the 100 batters that he faced in 27 innings for the Brewers, gave up 1 earned run and a .33 ERA, which came in Milwaukee's 4th game of the season. He was on a streak of 31 batters faced in which he didn't yield a hit. So, great season for those two. Love to see some awards being dealt out in our postseason, especially the World Series going on. You got to get those other teams involved. You got to talk about those things. But I want to take an opportunity to go back to the postseason chatter, because we have some information that I want to dive into that I find to be very, very, very important when it comes to looking at history of the World Series and what we have potentially to look forward to. So we are at a point where right now the Dodgers are currently leading the series between them and Tampa Bay with a 2-1 lead, which is something that's very, very, very important, because percentage of times when a team has a 2-1 lead, they're ahead in the series, they go on to win the World Series 67.9% of the times. Okay? So a high percentage. That's what we have. Teams that are behind in that 2.1, obviously then 32.1% of the time. That's, very close to that 2/3, 1/3. So those numbers make a great deal of sense. But I wanted to look into what truly is the importance of Game 4. I'm looking at everything that's going into this game. So how these teams have performed, the pitchers that are coming up, and I have this feel that Game 4 is going to be the game that swings this World Series. When Tampa Bay is throwing their 4th starter because the other 3 necessarily haven't been their best. The Dodgers are starting a guy who hasn't gotten really many postseason starts, period, this year. He's been working on the bullpen mostly, and his 1 postseason start, he had a great amount of run support, so wasn't a lot of pressure there. When the Dodgers offense or the Rays offense, whoever is getting on the board first is winning these games, there's so much that's going into it. So I thought, is there a chance that whatever team wins this game may ride off with a little bit of extra momentum, and the odds would potentially say they would be the one to win? So I looked into that, trying to find some numbers, some percentages to back that up. So let's look at that. When we have a team that is up 2-1, they are ahead in the World Series. We said it. So the Dodgers technically right now have a 67.1% chance to win the World Series. When they are ahead and the next game they win, so we say the Dodgers take a 3-1 lead, they increase their chances of winning the World Series by 20.5%. So they go from 67% and add about 20% to that. They go from being 87% chance favorites to win the World Series. And when you think about that, it makes sense. You're up 3-1. You have then 3 games, 5, 6, and 7, to try and close things out. So you should be considered massive, massive favorites at that point. It makes sense. But here is where I think things get very interesting. If you are that team that is ahead, like they are, at 67% chance to favorite, if they lose that game, their probability of winning the World Series is decreased by 17.9%. 17.9. So they drop just under 50% in being the favorites. If the Rays come back and win this game, a lot of the time, the team that carries, I shouldn't say a lot of the time, they would be the slight favorites, percentage-wise, to go on and win this World Series because they ride the momentum, they tied it up, and they think they're more favored to win, to move on. And so obviously looking at those numbers from the other side, if you're 2-1, series is 2-1, your team that's behind. If you win, you increase your chances by 17.9%. If you lose, you decrease your chances by 20.5. So it becomes a major, major swing. And this is not just a prediction based on, what the team has done this year, looking at who's going to pitch on the thing. That's looking at past World Series. Where we were at when teams get to that 3-1 mark. What's happening? Because a lot of the times when it goes to 3-1, we're seeing most of these teams close it out. When it's 2-1, when it goes to 2-2, we are seeing more often the team that won that game 4 go on to win. But it's close. It's very, very, very close. But it's why that makes this game so incredibly, incredibly important. You can kind of feel it coming together. The Dodgers have had 2 games they've dominated. The Rays have had 1. Will this be the one that turns the tide and totally lets one team grab the reins and take advantage of this series? Will this be the one? And like we said before, we talked about players that are going to be the reason why they potentially win. I can go back to the exact names that we had. We talked about Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. If the Dodgers are going to win this World Series, he needs to be the guy that comes out and does well. He came out, pitched a great game 1. They took game 1. We talked about Mookie Betts. His offensive performance in that leadoff spot has been solid. In this postseason, he has been great. He has just been great. And he's going to continue to get that love for this Dodgers team like he should. This is the MVP type player that we were bringing in to try and get us over that hump. We've been to too many World Series in the past. This is that all-star MVP type player that we need to get us over and get that ring that we've been trying to get since 1988. And then we came to that Dodgers bullpen where when the lead has been there, thankfully, the starters for the Dodgers have been able to go 6 innings both times, so they got their wins. But the bullpen hasn't blown anything yet. So it has been great. Mookie Betts, and we talked about those numbers, batting .316, 1 home run, 7 RBIs. He's been 18 hits and 12 runs. He's scoring 2/3 of the times when he gets on base. So if those guys continue to produce, Mookie keeps doing well, the bullpen is fine. If this is going to go to a game 5, you got to imagine it's going to be a Kershaw start game again. That is going to be the reason that they would win the World Series. They're going to follow with those numbers. Those guys that I predicted right away, it's looking like, yeah, they're the reason that they're kind of ahead at this moment, and it's going to keep being that way. One person that we didn't mention that's being a big reason of why they're winning is also Max Muncy, who's having himself a great World Series. Flipping to that other team, looking at Tampa Bay, the players that we talked about, who are going to be the ones, why they win? I said Tyler Glasnow right away, and he struggled in Game 1. And our other starters haven't been as great either. Big ask of Ryan Yarbrough in Game 4. But once it goes to Game 5, there's a good chance that we're going to see Glasnow there again. And if that's the case, he has to be ready to go. He is going to be the one that's fighting off the Dodgers, whether it be 2-2 or whether it be 3-1. He's going to be the one fighting off the series. Now, the Dodgers have already announced that Kershaw is going to be the one going in that Game 5. Tampa Bay is undecided at this point. We'll see what happens tonight, and I'm sure a decision will be made from there. But my guess would be Glasnow. I mean, he's going to be the next starter up, you got to think, but we'll see. Then we looked at offensively. Arozarena has been great, and you can't really knock him. 8 home runs, 11 RBIs, 354 batting average, 425 on base, 800 slugging. This is an all-time great postseason. All-time great. He needs to give a little bit in this World Series to be there, because the thing that gets scary about a guy that's performing so well in the postseason is you can see a team suffer when he isn't producing. And you're like, you may respond to that, well, that's a silly argument. Well, of course, if a guy's not playing well, the rest of the team not playing well makes sense. I know, but a hot bat can really carry an offense. A hot bat can be very contagious in an offense. And when that hot bat disappears, an offense can take a step back. That's what I'm saying in this situation. And we also talked about Brandon Lau. MVP all year. One great World Series game. But that one great World Series game is not going to be enough when you're batting 123, 186 on base, and only 262 slugging. He was one of their best players all season long, and he's been one of their worst in the postseason. Something's going to have to give there. And the Tampa Bay, they've been asking a lot of their bullpen so far in this World Series. They need a starter to go deeper. That's what needs to happen. This is a swing game. I feel like Game 4 is going to be the one that decides this World Series. It's got to feel that way. Tampa Bay needs this. The Dodgers need this to feel some security. We'll see how it goes. That's the feel. That's the numbers. That's everything I'm looking at. The players that I thought are going to matter in this. I'm excited. Game 4 is going to be big. It's going to be a big one. I know I'm going to be glued to the TV tonight to see this one happen. And hopefully, when you guys are hearing this tomorrow, some of the takes make sense. So, we're going to take one more quick break. Having fun talking all these numbers. We got some more numbers we're going to talk about in our next segment because I need to dive into something that has been a big change in baseball. A big change, especially recently, that some of the higher-ups in baseball are thinking about trying to control a little bit, trying to limit teams. We're going to talk about that a little bit more coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
So we just got done talking about some odds and what it's going to take in the World Series coming up. It's fun to discuss this stuff. At my core, I really truly am a stats nerd. I just love looking at the numbers, seeing the statistics. What's it going to take? What's the probability? If you win this game, you lose this game in a series when we're sitting 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, whatever. I really love diving into that stuff. So it's definitely fun to have that discussion and really talk about why it might potentially be important or why this might be a swing game at some point. But with that mindset, staying in that mind frame, I want to talk about something else that stats have really pushed in baseball and have dramatically changed the game in recent years. And some of you might have an idea what I'm talking about. It really has to deal with the shift. Now, the shift has been something that has been in baseball for a long time. So let's not act and pretend like it's something that has been just recently invented, altering the games in a major, major way. No, it's been around. We've had some massive power hitters that have been hitting into the shift for quite some time and dealing with it. But there has been conversations on whether or not the shift is good for baseball. And there actually was some recent discussion with Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, about a desire to potentially changing the way we use shifts in baseball, okay? It seems like there's a desire to kind of prevent teams from using it as much. There was an interview with Rob Manfred on the Dan Patrick Show where Manfred had explained that there could be a limit placed on defensive shifts in the future, and he was quoted in saying, a lot of people feel that the extreme shifting that you're talking about in ways that are not positive, it remains a really hot topic in terms of conversation within that committee, end quote. And to kind of go on top of that, there were some statistics to kind of really back that as well. And this is coming per Baseball Savant, talking about some shifts numbers. The LA Dodgers in the 2020 season, they were the team that used the shift the most throughout the entire year. 1,210 times in 2,168 opponent plate appearances. So they were using the shift, or at least some sort of shift, more than half the time the opposing team was at the plate. 28 out of 30 MLB teams also used the shifts on at least 405 plate appearances. So we are seeing this happen in massive, massive, massive amounts. And these teams have been using these shifts for years, like we said, and it's an attempt to create easy outs based on hitter tendencies. And that's kind of the big thing where I have a problem with this, if you are someone that is completely against the shift. It almost kind of takes away from pure hitters, in a sense, is what I'd say. And now, I can't sit here and be like, okay, get better, and that's why you'll stop the shift. That's an easy cop-out to say. But these guys, if these people that are up there swinging at the plate are really playing just for power baseball, which is what we are seeing from a lot of guys, we're really swinging for the fences these days. We're not swinging for singles as much as we used to. The shift is going to be used a lot more. Okay, you're trying to hit power against whatever pitching you face and hit something square, hit something hard. So that's going to lead in a lot of pulled pitches. That's why the shift is going to be out there. And so the best way to really truly combat it is some teams may be looking at, okay, we got to use the whole field here again. We're trying to do whatever we can to get on base. Now, it's going to get very interesting if this does happen, though, because if we start to see some teams actually starting to go more opposite field than in the past, the shift will go back, and then teams will want to change their tendencies again to swing more power. It's going to be kind of a balance effect. If you pull one thing to one side, the other side is going to adapt. So I really feel like we're truly in a situation where that's happening. The shifts are just in a power play right now because a lot of these teams are trying to hit for power as a result. And if teams are really overly worried about this, they need to start trying to do some things to combat it, to change what the defense can do. So that's going to be having some of your hitters get better at swinging to go opposite field, taking those breaking balls and pushing them to the other side. Maybe it's going to be trying to get a few more guys to sneak in some sort of squeeze bunt or drag bunt to the opposite side where the shift isn't happening. You're going to have to try to get creative if you want to defeat that. I do have a problem with us just saying, okay, we're going to regulate and prevent teams from using this. Because all it is great scouting. That's what it is. Our scouting in the MLB is so good that we know tendencies of all of these players to such a massive extent. We know what they are doing a percentage of the time. We can break it down. We have these hit charts. We know where the ball is being sprayed to a lot of the times. So can we really punish defenses for just being smarter? It seems like a very silly concept to me, and I don't like that idea. Instead, I think these teams need to get better at adapting. Make teams get out of the shift because of something you are doing. That's what we need to look into. And the other thing is, if you're getting guys on base compared to just hitting for power, this is another thing. Trying to get guys on base, hitting for those singles, hitting those doubles, getting on base any way you can, you're more likely to get guys out of the shift as well. I hope in the conversations that come up, we talked about this, the MLB, you got a lot of things that you're going to discuss in the MLB winter meetings. Some things that really need to stay and some things that really may need to change. But this is not one where you need to limit teams. And I really hope that this doesn't get a massive push from general managers, coaches, and everything, because I just think it's a lazy cop-out. I think you're just trying to handicap the defense to benefit your offense. And it just seems kind of silly. Now, I can understand to an extent as a fan why you may not like these. And I actually listened to another interview recently. John Smoltz was on the Dan Levitard show, and they had talked to him about shifts a little bit. And he made up a really good point. And one thing that we are losing with the shift happening so much, we aren't seeing the truly dominant infield defensive players anymore. It feels like the great web gem plays there aren't, I don't want to say they're not happening because we still see them, but the opportunities are gone because we're asking a lot of these infielders to cover less ground with this. We truly have a surplus, it feels like, of great outfielders, great outfield plays defensively. Like, I'm just thinking of everything we've seen from, like, Mookie Betts in this postseason. Like, he's been awesome in right field. He's been doing great stuff. We see that because even with these shifts happening, and while we may move positionally a little bit with our outfielders, these guys are still out there covering a great deal of ground that they are responsible for. It doesn't have that feel in the infield anymore. We don't have, in particular, the shortstops and the second basemen that are covering this massive amount of ground, making these great plays, showing off their athleticism in the field like we have in the past. That's one thing that I feel like we're definitely losing out on when we're moving our third baseman over and our shortstop all the way to the other side of the bag. Yeah, we're losing out there. But is there truly another great argument against what we're really missing out on? I mean, this is teams doing what they can to win. They're not cheating. They're not breaking any rules. They're not bending any rules. They're game planning. They're practicing. They're doing what they need to win games. That's what it is. So, with that said, can't we ask these teams to also game plan practice, do what they can to beat the shift. I was the one that sat on the seat, recorded why I thought the bunting should be coming back into baseball with the extra innings rule. I was told by a couple people, well, they just don't practice bunting anymore. That's why the bunting is not as good. Okay. Then shouldn't we think about practicing it so that it actually benefits our team and helps us win? I mean, when I looked at the statistics, when I looked at the numbers, when teams were getting down bunts in extra innings, it was actually helping and pushing towards winning games. So couldn't we use that to try to prevent the shift a little bit, keep defenders on their toes? Oh, you're going to sneak your shortstop to the other side? Sorry. You're going to sneak your second baseman over there? I'll bunt it to that other side to make it so I can get on base easier. I mean, is that a crazy idea? I mean, I know how difficult it is to bunt. I know. I can't sit here and go, 95-mile-per-hour fastball bunted towards second base, easy. No. But hitting through a shift isn't easy either. I just think a lot of these teams need to look at something, try to adapt, continue to adapt. And I think that's what's going to happen. These guys are way too smart in front offices. They know what they're doing. They know how to make sure they can keep winning. There's always going to be that team or that player or that, there's going to be somebody that's going to figure out something new to beat what was being done. The game is always evolving, changing. A lot of things are going to come into play. So I really hope the MLB doesn't push onto us some sort of rule to change the shift. I think and hope teams get smarter and find another way to beat it. That's where I stand on that. I'm a little worrisome. I talked about it in the first segment. I mean, there's times where you try to do too much, change the game too much to make things happen and make things be more exciting, to fix things you think are not helping the game. This isn't one of them. If the team was on to take that risk to play the shift so often, do something to beat it. That's where I stand. So, I know. That's the type of talk you wanted to hear in the end of a baseball podcast in 2020, right? Shift talk, bunt talk, all that fun stuff. But that's all that I have to say for that. That's going to be it for me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. I want to thank you once again for downloading, listening. It means a great deal. Your support is so appreciated. If you have the time, one more thing you could do that would be great is if you could leave a positive comment, some feedback on something that you love from the podcast today. Maybe something else you want to hear us talk about. Maybe you want to talk about some things that the MLB might change for the next season. You have some thoughts potentially on the World Series that's happened so far. Maybe you want to talk about those odds in the World Series depending on where the series is at. Would love to hear from any of you guys. Great conversation points. Want to thank you once again. Collin Manley signing off here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.